Hello everyone, this is a quick look at the RetroUSB AVS unit, which for those that don't know, is basically a third-party alternative for the NES that is made to work with more modern television sets. For this particular video, it's going to be part unboxing video, which is what we're going to be starting off right now here, where you basically get a look at exactly what you get right out of the box from the unit here. And for the later part of the video, what I'm actually going to do is showcase some of the recorded footage of assorted games I have from my own personal collection. Starting off with the unboxing section itself here, let me move this out of the way. We have, honestly, what is a very tight but simple setup on the inside here. On the very top of the unit itself is an old style paper manual here. Honestly, the book itself isn't that impressive. It's mostly black and white here, but it's still a nice little touch, a callback to the old days. Color outside there, a nice little memo section, which is amusing to have because really, what are you writing memos at this point of day? Either way, it's still a nice little touch here. The unit itself, which is the next thing we're taking a look at here, is, in terms of profile-wise, if I'm using the term correctly, it's a little bit smaller than the classic toaster NES there. As you can see, the color scheme is directly calling back to the original toaster NES as well. And the buttons, I believe, are actually original unit replacement units, taken from like a Nintendo Service Center Depot or something like that. If you take a quick look on the inside, you see the ports for both the classic North American games, or in this case, also PAL, since they use the exact same card type, as well as the Famicom slot there. Just one thing I want to note about the NEA or the North American style unit is you actually, when you're inserting the game, you need to actually kind of float it in there. You don't just slide it in there normally, so that is something you need to keep an eye out. In terms of the front there, you can see it has built-in 4-score compatibility, basically, so that's a nice touch. You don't need to find a little extra accessory for that. In terms of the power supply here, well, before the power supply, they provide their own HDMI cable. That's a nice touch. That was not always the case back in the day with devices like this. The actual main power supply is this USB cable here, which could plug into like a extra unit or plug into this kind of generic USB power outlet that they have here. It's nothing special, but it does get the job done. The last immediate thing for this package actually was a small little catalog from RetroUSB showing some either already available homeroom games or some upcoming ones that they're making, which is a nice little touch. Last thing I want to say about the USB cord actually is that you can use that to directly plug into a TV or computer to power your unit that way, just in case you don't want to use the included power supply there. So at least they give you extra options. That's always nice. Here's one last look at the units themselves side by side with the original NES here. So as you can see, it is indeed a lot smaller, both in like little sidewise there, and definitely a lot thinner overall. So if you have space concerns with your gaming setup, it's definitely a nice little improvement there. All in all, a very nice design in keeping with the original look. Moving on to the in-depth video look at this point, just to give you an idea, I'm actually testing this out with assorted games, basically some North American titles I have here, some Famicom cards that I have handy, and that's also including both bootleg cards as well as multi-cards, all which ran fine for my testing here. And this particular one is the Famicom version of Shadow of the Ninja that I have here. In terms of what you're seeing with the video, I should just put this as a caveat here. As I've recorded the live action portions of this video in 1080p and the AVS itself outputs in 720p, I have somewhat upscaled the video here just so it better fits within the window. So if there's any slight blurriness you might notice due to the encoding there, it's related to that and not the AVS output itself, because that puts out really clean output that's like really sharp, really vibrant in color, and basically feels like something you might see have an emulator most of the time. Speaking of which, you might notice in this case, not so much in this, but also later footage there, that the actual pixels, especially in the horizontal scape, seem a little wider than you might expect, especially if you're used to playing with emulator stuff. But that's because the AVS is also trying to emulate the old 4x3 fashion that old CRTs used to play at, which pretty much means it's going to be a little more stretched out than you might expect. It's not pure square pixels. Speaking of third-party titles, here's a proof of concept of the system running the Tengen port of Shinobi for the NES here. So as you can see, everything is running here just fine. There's no problems whatsoever. And unfortunately, even if the game isn't any good, like this one, it's actually quite terrible, the system will run it just fine. We're going to actually step away from gameplay momentarily here to actually look at some of the front-end stuff, namely how the system handles Game Genie codes. So from here, we loaded up the Game Genie code cheat codes menu here. As you can see, the game was automatically detected, so it actually has some preset codes already loaded on the system here, although you can still insert them manually. I just selected the Play as Girls in the Versus mode code. automatically filled in the rest of the stuff for me, and as we start with the game and go into the versus menu, you'll see everything's already been applied there. So generally speaking, the cheat code stuff is fairly painless in its setup here, so it's a nice little touch. Here's another proof of concept video here. In this case, what I'm playing is actually one of my assorted Famicom multi-cards here. I think this one, taking a look at the cover here, was called 1993 Super HIK 7-in-1. So as you can see, it's very official here. And this very official card, I can't even say that with a straight face here, normally doesn't run very well on any of the Retron series of hardware or a lot of the earlier kind of clone systems. But as you can see, the AVS can indeed run it just fine. In case anyone wondering, this bootleg game from Kony does indeed play as badly as it looks. Controls are actually atrocious on this particular title, but as I mentioned before, I do like collecting my fighting games, and bootlegs are always interesting, so I had to have it anyway. Before I go into any final thoughts, by the way, the game I'm showing in the background here is Street Fighter 2010, the final fight by Capcom. I'd just want to mention a few different omissions that I made during the course of this video here. Namely, things you didn't see me look at were like video filters, such as scanlines. Part of the reason I didn't show any scanline stuff is because while I did record some footage on there, I didn't remember to actually record footage of the same game using with and without scanlines for a proper comparison point. So I felt since I didn't have it on there, I better just leave it out there. Generally speaking, in case you're wondering, the scanline stuff does come off looking fine there. I'm honestly not that big on video filters myself, so I prefer playing without them. But if you do like having them on, they do a decent job on here. So generally, your mileage may vary on that, depending whether you like that kind of stuff or not. The second larger omission that I made is the scoreboard feature for this system. For those that are wondering, I'm basically referring to the fact you could plug the AVS into your computer, and by using some specialized software that lets you connect to the Nintendo Age servers, I believe, you can compare your score on any given game to that of other people that have Nintendo Age accounts. And the reason I don't showcase any of that stuff here is because I don't actually have a Nintendo Age account myself. Therefore, I can't exactly show it off properly. In terms of how I feel about the system itself, I honestly felt this was a really worthwhile purchase, especially since I do have a... It's not the biggest NES collection, but it's a decent sized collection of both NES and Famicom stuff. Generally speaking, everything on here that I've tried up to this point seems to have run really well and feels, if not the exact same as original hardware, it feels virtually the same, so I can't really complain about anything there. The video quality is great, the sound quality is great. The fact that the system has so many peripheral setups already built in as features is a really nice touch. So obviously I don't have to worry about force score, it's already built in. I don't have to worry about getting the game genie set up properly and hooked up without and possibly messing some pins. That it's already built in. I don't have a game to show it off, but Famicom expansion ports apparently works just fine. It has the support in there as well. In fact, the only thing I can think of really design-wise for the physical system itself that might be somewhat problematic and just have to keep an eye out for is that the pins themselves, like on a lot of other clone systems, are a little tight. And for the NES port on this particular one, it feels like you have to float the game somewhat in order to push it in. You can't just slide it in flat. And those are both minor at best. You can get around those issues. So all in all, would I recommend this system? Yes. Is it worth the price tag? Definitely. So, if I haven't said and gotten the point across enough, yes, I highly recommend the RetroUSB AVS if you happen to really enjoy playing NES games, and Famicom games for that matter there, and it's definitely a worthwhile investment. Thanks for everyone that's watched up to this point. I hope you've gotten some useful information here, or at least it helped make you up your own mind whether or not you want to pick up this system for yourself. Everyone take care and catch you all later.